Gabriel Moretti had always been a meticulous strategist, the type who plans every move with surgical precision. At 40 years old, as the director of one of the largest technology companies in the country, he prided himself on his ability to turn ideas into results and to lead his team like a general in the field. His office, encased in glass at the top of a skyscraper, was a reflection of the strength and confidence he exuded. To others, the director was the epitome of a determined leader, whose decisions were spot on and whose focus was unwavering. However, he was also a man of deep silences, more introspective than his colleagues realized. From a young age, he nurtured the desire to start a family, to spend Sundays at home, listening to children's laughter while telling stories at the table. But this part of his life plan unraveled when he was 30, after receiving an unexpected diagnosis. He was sterile. The impact was overwhelming. At the time, he was engaged and full of dreams, undergoing a series of fruitless treatments that only exacerbated the tension in the relationship. The pressure and discouragement eventually led to the end of the relationship, leaving Gabriel with an invisible but painful scar. After the breakup, he dedicated himself more intensely to work, not out of emptiness or frustration, but as a way to prove to himself that he still had control over his life. Building his empire was a way to reaffirm his ability to overcome any obstacle. Yet despite every success and apparent self-sufficiency, he carried a reservoir of emotions he barely understood, like a suitcase he never had the courage to open. The following years brought new achievements and some casual relationships, but he never found someone who understood what he kept so deep inside. The fear of rejection, more than pride, kept him emotionally distant. Thus he continued his journey, avoiding confronting an important piece of himself that he perhaps didn't know how to heal. On a fall morning, he boarded his private jet for a business trip abroad. As he flew over the ocean, he watched the clouds through the window, feeling as empty and lonely as the infinite sky ahead of him. Little did he know that his life was about to change drastically. Upon arriving at the destination, a small coastal town in a tropical country, he went straight to a series of meetings. At the end of the day, exhausted and with his head full of numbers and strategies, he decided to take a drive along the coast to clear his thoughts. That's when the unexpected happened. A sharp curve, a moment of distraction, and suddenly his world flipped. The car skidded on the road wet from recent rain, rolling over several times before coming to rest upside down in a ditch by the roadside. The silence that followed was broken only by the distant sound of the waves and the tinkling of twisted metal. Eva was heading home after a long day working at the local inn when she saw the accident happen. Without hesitating, she stopped her old car and ran towards the wreckage. With her heart racing, she approached the overturned vehicle, praying to the heavens that the driver was still alive. "Are you okay? Can you hear me?" she shouted, kneeling beside the car. A weak groan was the response. Carefully, she struggled to open the driver's door. That's when she found him, unconscious and held by the seatbelt. With a strength she didn't know she possessed, she managed to unbuckle the seatbelt and drag the man out of the car. She checked his vital signs, relieved to realize he was still breathing. Quickly, she called emergency services and stayed by his side, holding his hand and whispering words of comfort until the ambulance arrived. At the hospital, he woke up disoriented, in pain all over his body. The first thing he saw was Eva's worried face beside his bed. Where am I?" he murmured. "You are in the hospital. You were in a car accident, but you will be fine," she replied with a gentle smile. "My name is Eva. I saw the accident happen and called for help." He nodded, still trying to absorb everything. "Ah, thank you." After a moment, he tried to be polite. "You don't need to worry if you want to leave. I'm fine. I'm already in the hospital." She smiled softly and responded naturally. "I know. But I think I'll stay until I'm sure everything is really okay." He looked at her for a moment, surprised by her firmness. He didn't argue anymore. Perhaps for the first time in a long time, he didn't mind having someone around. Eva was a simple woman, but her life had not been easy, Raised with very little, she learned early on to be resilient and care for others. She lost her parents at a young age, and with that, the responsibility of taking care of her younger brother fell on her shoulders. Over the years, she learned to face life head-on, always with a smile, always believing that generosity could transform any situation. In the following days, she felt an inexplicable urge to return to the hospital. She wanted to see how he was doing, and perhaps without admitting it to herself, was also curious. When she met him again, she brought flowers to break the coldness of the room, decorating the environment with a touch of colour and life. While he recovered, Eva's light and laid-back presence brought out unexpected conversations. He, accustomed to formal and cold dialogues, felt curious about her natural and simple manner. Eva told stories about her life in the small coastal town, where she worked as a maid in a guest house and lived a modest but meaningful life. Her voice warmed as she spoke of her dream of opening a little craft shop, and her brown eyes shone with a spontaneity he hadn't seen in years. Over time, Eva began to visit him almost daily, captivating him effortlessly, everything being very natural. As the days unfolded, he found himself looking forward to the visits. For the first time in a long while, he felt that someone truly saw him, without the filter of money or status. Gradually, he began to share small details about his life, mentioning that he was in town for work but without fully revealing his position or who he really was. This anonymity felt comforting to him. Eva treated him without formality, like an ordinary person, without the barriers he normally encountered. With her, he felt he could finally just be himself. When the time came for him to be discharged, Gabriel found himself reluctant to leave the town and Eva's comforting presence. Impulsively, he decided to extend his stay, claiming he needed more time to fully recover before going home, something he had never done before. He found a small house to rent near the beach, planning to stay temporarily. In the weeks that followed, he discovered a new world through Eva's eyes. After her working hours, she would take him on long walks at sunset, introduce him to local dishes at seaside restaurants, and include him in the city's welcoming community. He felt a lightness he hadn't experienced in years, enchanted by the simplicity and genuine happiness of the people around him. What impressed him the most was how everyone seemed truly satisfied, even while leading a life of hard and modest work. Slowly, Gabriel began to open up. He told Eva about his lonely childhood, as the only child of absent parents, about the constant pressure to be successful, and about the emptiness he felt despite all his accomplishments. And finally, he shared his greatest pain, the inability to have children. She listened to him with compassion, without judgment. She shared her own struggles and dreams, talking about how she lost her parents at a young age and had to raise her younger brother on her own. Her strength and resilience touched his heart deeply. As the days passed, something unexpected began to blossom between them. What started as gratitude and friendship transformed into something deeper. He found himself admiring Eva's warm smile, the way her eyes lit up when she spoke about her passions. She, in turn, felt increasingly drawn to the kindness and vulnerability he showed when he was by her side. One night, as they walked along the beach under a starry sky, their hands touched. It was a moment of electricity, a connection that both felt to their core. He stopped, looked into her eyes, and for the first time in his life allowed himself to be completely vulnerable. "You changed my life," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "I never thought I could feel something like this for someone." She smiled, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You've changed my life too. I've never met anyone like you." That night, under the moonlight, they shared their first kiss. It was a moment of pure magic, where time seemed to stop and the world around disappeared. He felt as if he were home for the first time in his life. In the months that followed, he lived moments of happiness he had never imagined. He indefinitely postponed his return, managing his business from a distance and going to the big city occasionally when necessary. Meanwhile, he discovered, alongside her, the beauty of simple things. The pleasure of a shared breakfast, the thrill of learning something new, the peace of falling asleep in her arms. One day, during a conversation by the sea, he decided to share more about his life and confessed to being the owner of a large company with a considerable fortune. Eva remained silent, surprised. She imagined he was a businessman, but not a billionaire. The revelation made her feel a little uneasy. He noticed and asked if something was bothering her. With a sincere look, she replied that the value of things to her was not in money or possessions, but in the experiences shared and genuine connections with people, and she hoped that this wouldn't hinder them. Her response touched him deeply, and he understood that with her, he was experiencing something much greater than all the success he had ever achieved. After a few months together, and with the certainty that they had found something rare and true, he decided to ask for her hand in marriage. Without any shadow of a doubt, he knew that it was by her side that he wanted to be, and she, in turn, felt the same. The love between the two was genuine, devoid of appearances or interests. In a simple and intimate ceremony, surrounded by some friends and family, they got married by the seaside, to the sound of the waves and under the open sky, sealing the promise of a new life together. The following days were filled with happiness and adaptation to the new daily routine, until Eva began to feel different. At first, she thought that the nausea and fatigue were just the reflections of the excitement of living a new chapter by his side. But as the symptoms became frequent, she decided to see a doctor. Although anxious, she felt deep down that a new surprise was coming. The news overwhelmed them. Eva was pregnant, and not with one, but with 2 babies. He was left speechless, as if the world around him had slowed down. How was this possible? He had always known, with a silent sorrow, that sterility had robbed him of the chance to be a father. Now, that reality seemed to crumble before his eyes, a wave of disbelief that hit him with force. The doctor, upon hearing his history, suggested that perhaps his body had undergone unexpected changes over the years and recommended a test to better understand the situation. Although he had never questioned Eva's fidelity, doubt made him accept the suggestion. When the result finally arrived, confirming what seemed impossible, he could not prevent tears from starting to fall. The doctor, with a gentle smile, explained that the new lifestyle, with less stress and more happiness alongside his wife, could be the key to this miraculous change. With tears freely rolling down, he embraced Eva, feeling the weight of so many years of pain and loneliness dissolve in front of a renewed love and a future he had never imagined. The happiness was so deep that it seemed all the suffering had been worth it. At that moment, he felt something he had never experienced before. Such a deep and overwhelming unconditional love that it almost took his breath away. He knelt, embracing her waist, pressing his ear against her still flat belly, imagining the 2 lives growing inside. The following months were a whirlwind of emotions. He followed every step of the pregnancy with anxiety and excitement, waking up in the middle of the night to feel the baby's first movements. Eva, radiant, seemed more beautiful each day, and together they prepared the room, with him wanting the best, while she reminded him that love was the most important thing. As the birth approached, he reflected on the change in his life. Once obsessed with success and power, he now knew that true value lay in the bonds we build with those we love. On the quiet summer night when Eva went into labour, he took her to the hospital, his heart racing. During the following hours, he became her support, holding her hand and offering words of strength. When, finally, the cries of the twins filled the delivery room, he cut the umbilical cords with trembling hands, tears streaming down. Seeing the babies in his wife's arms, his heart almost burst with love. A boy and a girl, small and perfect, looking at the world with curious eyes. "Hello, my loves," Eva whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Welcome to the world." He leaned in, kissing her forehead and then each baby's. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely audible. "Thank you for giving me a family, for giving me love, for giving me everything I've ever dreamed of." In the days that followed, he fully embraced the role of a father. He changed diapers, gave bottles and sang lullabies. Every smile from the twins was a celebration. Eva watched with affection his transformation. The withdrawn and controlled man she had known had now become a loving father, who didn't hesitate to make funny faces to make the babies laugh. As she nursed them and he looked at them with adoration, she had a revelation. Throughout her life she sought control, believing it would bring happiness. But true happiness was in surrendering to love without reservations. You taught me what truly matters in life. It's not money, it's not power. It's this moment, this family that we've built together. She smiled, her eyes shining with love. We saved each other. You gave me love and security, and I showed you that life can be simple yet wonderful. He took her hand, kissing it gently. I love you more than I ever thought it was possible to love someone. You and our children are my greatest treasure. In that moment, surrounded by the love of his family, he felt a deep peace. He finally understood that true wealth was not in his bank account, but in his children's smiles, in the love in Eva's eyes, in the simple moments they shared. The billionaire who once believed he was doomed to solitude now had everything he ever dreamed of. A family, unconditional love, and a new perspective on life. He knew they would face challenges ahead, but with her by his side and the love of his children to guide him, he was ready for anything. And so in that small house by the sea, far from skyscrapers and meeting rooms, Gabriel Almeida finally found his true home and true happiness. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.